Hello everybody, my name is Veronica Varner and this is my final presentation for our philosophy class, Solving a Moral Dilemma, and the dilemma that I chose was the concentration camp scenario. In this scenario, a mother and her son are being held at a Nazi concentration camp. The son makes an attempt to escape, but he is caught. Therefore, the guards decide to punish him by hanging. The guard who is about to hang him also orders the mother to pull out the chair from underneath him, and if she refuses, then he will kill another innocent random bystander in the group. In this dilemma, the mother has two choices. Choice A is to pull the chair, and choice B, to not pull the chair. In this slide, I will be explaining the two choices and weigh out the arguments for both of them. There are also some similarities between them that I will be discussing a little bit later on in the presentation, but for now I have the pros and cons for each of them. Under choice A, I will have a similarity listed that you will also see underneath choice B. The similarity between the two being that the son will pass away due to hanging. But if she does pull the chair, then an innocent life will be spared. However, pulling the chair, one could say, is an indirect act of aiding in her son's death. This can also cause her heavy amounts of emotional trauma as well, along with any other trauma that she has been having to experience or will experience. Underneath choice B, we will see the first similarity. The son will pass away due to hanging. However, under choice B, it would not be due to his mother's hand, technically. But if she does not pull the chair, an innocent life will be killed along with him. This would also be considered a form of indirect murder since she is making that choice. And regardless of whether or not she chooses to pull it, it will be pulled and the son will pass. Looking at our two choices now, I wholeheartedly agree that choice A would be the best decision to make for the mother and her son, as well as anybody else who is in the group. Choice A ultimately creates the best possible outcome with the least amount of harm and the least amount of consequences. In the rest of the presentation, I will be explaining more about why I support this decision. When it comes to moral theories, there is no size fits all. There are a lot of things from natural law theory that I do take into account when making my own moral decisions. Therefore, I wanted to apply it to this presentation since it's a perspective that I am comfortable with. Of course, there are a lot of shortcomings of natural law theory, and I will be talking a little bit more about that a little bit further into the presentation. However, I wanted to take some of their aspects and beliefs and apply it to choice A. Natural law theory suggests that morality is part of our rational nature, that essentially as human beings we automatically know how to discern right from wrong and how to weigh out the best possible outcome in a scenario. A general aspect of natural law theory also includes intrinsic worth and the value of life, as well as the moral duty to preserve life, especially in threatening situations. In this scenario, we can see a perfect example of the principle of double effect, which was a principle that was conceptualized by Thomas Aquinas, and it states that an action that can cause serious harm may be permissible if that harm is an unintended side effect of bringing out a particular good. One of the most common scenarios would be one in self-defense that would be justifiable since you are protecting yourself and the person who is intending on harming you is performing an immoral act. For this scenario, I also wanted to apply a little bit of utilitarianism. This moral theory suggests that there is only one goal, and that is the greatest net happiness for everybody. Of course, in this concentration camp scenario, there isn't many outcomes that result in ultimate happiness. So in this case, I'll take out the utilitarian morality scale, which states that benefits are morally good and harm is morally bad. With this scale, ends must justify the means, and the rightness and wrongness of an action is based upon the consequences that follow. There is also the aspect of impartiality, which is each person affecting a decision must have equal consideration. In this particular scenario, I do like to believe that people are naturally altruistic. However, in this particular scenario, I can't imagine anybody or very few that would be on the side of choice B. And the reason being is because they don't want to be that random bystander that ends up getting killed because of this mother's decision. Now I'll be taking a mixture of these two philosophies and apply it to their weaknesses, but also compare it side by side with an argument. Both natural law theory and utilitarianism are subjective theories, meaning that they are very general in their sense of morality. For instance, in utilitarianism, someone can disagree or agree with what will create the best possible outcome and the greatest amount of happiness. To go against that, I have the defense of moral duties, and each moral theory differs. However, there is the commonality of having a universal affinity for life and the moral obligation to not only protect it, but also to conserve it. It can be known to be the highest moral obligation of all. For instance, if someone had to commit a crime in order to save lives, then saving lives would be the ultimate priority. The second weakness being that the mother and son will ultimately suffer in both choice A and choice B. The mother will be suffering emotionally, and the son will suffer by hanging. Although this mother will be experiencing emotional trauma and loss from the death of her son, in choosing choice A, she will prevent another death, which will in turn prevent more suffering from loss. An innocent random bystander may not have any affiliation with her, but in order for her to prevent any emotional trauma that the bystander's family or friends will face, then ultimately she would have to choose choice A. The third weakness ties a bit into the second one. However, this can be considered an act of altruism to avoid paying with a life as opposed to paying with emotional trauma. I realize that we are supposed to stay within the confines of the scenario, but I also wanted to add that if I had to put myself in either the mother or the son's place, I would prefer for the mother to be the one to pull out the chair. The reason being is because it can be a last attempt at last words or a last consolation. When I was looking to get outside opinions, everyone essentially had the same ideals and came to the decision of choice A. And the reasoning being is because the loss of one life is ultimately better than the loss of two lives. However, someone did bring up the question of taking chances when it comes to their future in the concentration camp. Although it's a very bleak question, it does add a little bit of a thought-provoking element to the scenario. And this question was, if all the prisoners at the concentration camp are likely to get killed regardless, why not prevent the mother's trauma and spare her the rest of her life living in emotional pain? After talking about it a little bit with the group, we ultimately decided that the exchange of someone's trauma to someone's life is still not a fair exchange in this case. And although the chances are low to escape, it is best to conserve another life in hopes of that chance happening. In conclusion, regardless of whether you use a morality scale based on reason or utilitarianism or natural law theory or any philosophical perspective, they all share a commonality in wanting the best in every scenario for the good of all people and to ensure any benefits that are possible. In this exact scenario, unfortunately, there would be better outcomes and better consequences if we were given other choices. However, these people in the past were not given too many choices, and moral dilemmas like these were something that they would have to face on the daily. Recognizing that there were scenarios like this in the past remind us of the existence of moral good and pure evil and how to navigate our own morality as well. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Here's my last slide just to show my references.